Welcome to the Higher Education Access Corner. I'm your host, Tiffanie DeVan, and on today's episode, I'm shining a spotlight on our veterans, active duty service members, as well as their families and loved ones. November is National Veterans and Military Family Month. It's a time set aside to honor those who've served in the military, as well as their families who support them. National Veterans and Military Family Month is a time for Americans to come together to show their support, their gratitude, and to give thanks for all that our active service military members have done, our veterans, and for those families, again, who support them. Now, with that said, I am honored to have Brigadier General Maureen Weigl, Deputy Adjutant for Veterans Affairs, joining me today on this episode of the Higher Education Access Corner. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for this wonderful discussion on veterans.
Absolutely. And also, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
All right. Now, before we get going, we're going to talk about Maureen's bio. It is lengthy, but it is mighty and it's powerful. I'm not going to read as much of it, but I want everyone to actually go out to the Department of Military's Veterans Affairs and read her full bio. But I'm going to start out with Brigadier General Maureen Weigl was appointed Deputy Adjutant General for Veterans Affairs on April 12, 2021. In this position, she supervises the administration of state veterans programs, reintegration and outreach, and veterans initiatives for more than 700,000 veterans and their dependents. She also oversees the operation of Commonwealth's 6 veterans' homes. She retired from the Army in May 2016 after serving for 25 years. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Since her retirement, Maureen has become a small business owner and entrepreneur. She has also served with numerous organizations as a military and veterans advisor. Maureen was commissioned as a distinguished military graduate in 1993 through the Reserve Officer Training Corps at the University of Pittsburgh. She served in the Army Reserves, Active Army with the 10th Mountain Division, the New York Army National Guard, the Pennsylvania Army National Guard, and National Guard Bureau over her 25-year career. In 1994, as a newly commissioned lieutenant, she deployed to Haiti to support Operation Uphold Democracy in 2008 in response to the large number of personnel who returned from combat theaters with traumatic brain injury or mild traumatic brain injury. Then Major Weigl was selected by the director of the Army National Guard to deploy to Iraq to research methods of documenting those service members who were exposed or to rapid acceleration or concussive events. Brigadier General Weigl holds a bachelor's degree in political science and communications from the University of Pittsburgh, a master's in business ethics from Duquesne University, and a master of strategic studies from the U.S. Army War College. Again, thank you for joining me today, and that was awesome, right?
Thank you for having me.
That was absolutely amazing.
A Western Pennsylvania educated woman, I guess.
There you go. So as we kick off National Veterans and Military Family Appreciation Month, or as we kind of wrap up really what we're doing, a couple of things that I want to talk about is just starting with your career and your journey. So how did you get started? What made you want to serve?
Sure. You know, I was an athlete for most of my life. Played basketball, softball, ran cross country in high school, and at the end of my senior year, I was really debating on playing basketball in high school and college. But I wasn't good enough for Division I, and I was looking at Division III schools, and they were very expensive. So I decided to just go to the University of Pittsburgh, great school, and decided I'll just hang up basketball. I wasn't going to go there and play. And within my first semester, I kind of was missing something. I missed the competitiveness. I missed the teamwork, the whole team concept, and I was getting out of shape. And I ran into a nurse who was in ROTC, and she said, "Come try ROTC." I was like, "What's ROTC?" She said, "The Army." And I was like, "I'm never joining the Army." Now, my father was in the reserves, but had left the service prior to me being born, so I never really had that exposure. So she said you could join it, and you can join ROTC in college for 2 years without signing a contract, and I loved it. It was so much fun. I mean, it sounds crazy getting up at 6 in the morning, running PT before you go to college classes, and then on weekends when everyone else is partying, you're out in the woods in West Virginia, you know, rappelling off the side of a mountain and shooting weapons, and it was completely new to me, but it was just so much fun. So I was addicted, and then they said you could jump out of an airplane, and then I was like, sign me up. They said, well, you have the contract, and I was like, oh. So I was like, well, I really wanted to jump out of airplane, so I did, and I was good at it, and I had a lot of fun, so I finished college and became a distinguished military graduate, and I had the choice to go active duty, so I went with the 10th Mountain Division and loved it.
Wow. That's a lot. And I think it's good that you share that, especially the ROTC experience, because I talk to a lot of high school students. Some of them tap in and they don't know, exactly what it could feel like to go into it, what experiences you may have. I mean, it's kind of like a precursor to whether or not they might want to go into the military.
2 semesters, you could take it for 2 years without signing up, just to get exposed to what military service is. It's great.
Yeah. Okay. So now you have quite an extensive bio. So can you share a little bit about your journey of kind of like how you started and where you are now?
Sure. So I told you about ROTC. I actually waited too long to sign a contract. So when I was in ROTC, they said, well, you have to contract, but we can't give you a scholarship because you missed the deadline because I waited too long. So I went to basic training in AIT. And I was down at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, so I really was exposed, and my instructors were like, do you know you're going to be a private? And like here I'm in with cadets learning how to be an officer, and I'm like, it'll be fine. And so I went to basic training in AIT, and I was shocked at the folks who joined. And I watched these women who back in 1991, if they were single parents, had to give up custody of their children. So at night while I'm sitting there in bed reading my letters from all my million college friends, just can't believe I went to basic training, and my family, these women were crying. And I was just amazed because they didn't know if their ex-husband was taking care of their children or their parents were ever going to give custody back. And you realized what people sacrificed to serve and to give themselves a better life. So when I finished ROTC, I said, yes, I want to go active duty because I wanted to be that type of a leader who understood my subordinates. And I just loved it. I went to 10th Mountain Division. We went to Haiti, third world country. I was on an airplane with 290-some men. The only female. I was to do casualty operations. And when you realized you landed in Haiti and there's no running water, they turned everything off. You're like, what did I just do? Modesty goes out the window, and you learn how to survive and become an infantry type man, even though back then women weren't in the infantry. But it was just a neat experience, and I had the opportunity to see folks that were in a third world country, and they just kept wanting to touch my blue eyes and my hair because, it was so foreign to them. So I just loved the experiences, and every time in my military career that I, thought about leaving service, I had new opportunities that were just better and better. So I was active duty. My husband and I were going to get married in 1995, so I left active duty and found out about the Guard. I went to an active Guard position up in New York, National Guard, switched over and had a great time, and then 9/11 hit, and we were all activated and we were working, and it was very busy, but my mother-in-law became ill. So I was able to go back to Penn State and teach ROTC, first female instructor there, which was a lot of fun. And then the folks in Pennsylvania National Guard learned that I did a lot of officer, programs up in New York and asked me to come to Fort Indian Town Gap. And I went there, and it was interesting because that's right when they were deploying the largest number of National Guard service members since the Korean War. So we were getting ready to send 3,700 service members over with 2nd Brigade Combat Team. And that entire process was crazy. They say the Guard works 1 week in a month. We probably had 1 week in a month off. We were mobilizing and getting folks ready to go. Then we had 34 killed in action coming back. So you had to learn how to become an active duty installation because around here in Pennsylvania, you don't have those resources. So it was just, every time you turned around, it was just another amazing opportunity, even if it was good or bad, that you just learned from. And I just really enjoyed it. And then someone asked me to go down to National Guard Bureau to take and do personal policies down there and do mobilization policies. So again, it just got bigger and better every time. So I, ended up being down with a 4-star general who was a chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff office, getting him ready to talk about real world issues. So, you start as a private first class and you're in the Pentagon with the 4 stars that are advising the president, and you just can't explain how you got there. It was just amazing opportunities over and over again.
So me listening to you, I'm thinking, wow, you've had an amazing career. Did it feel like you were kind of like a trendsetter and breaking the barriers and having all of these first-time opportunities and fortunate to do it because, like you mentioned, you were the first woman to kind of go into some of these arenas. Did it feel like you were doing such amazing things at the time?
No, you did what you had to do to survive, and you wanted to fit in. So at the time, I had a lot of male peers, and I was an athletic, and I grew up in a family of 7, and I grew up between my 3 brothers. So I was used to being that girl that had to learn how to play football, and you were going to get, we called it kill the guy. Whoever had the ball, you all jump on that person, and you just had to deal with it. If you wanted to play, your brothers were going to do that. So it just was natural for me, and I never looked at it like I was trend-setting. I was the first female in Dunmore to play t-ball with my brothers because I wanted to play with my brothers. So I just always thrived in that type of an environment. But there were challenging times when sometimes you're like, really? This is where we are? When I was at Penn State teaching ROTC in 2001, this shocked me because I had already been in the Army for 10 years. And women were already integrated in so many of the services and the units. But all the men that teach ROTC were infantry. And at that time, women still were not in the infantry, not even as admin officers.
This is 2001.
Yes.
Wow.
So I was with all these men, and I remember sitting there with female cadets, and some of the NCOs had like these posters behind them of like half-naked women. And I was like, there's regulations, you can't have that. And they're like, oh, well, ma'am. So I went to the lieutenant colonel, who's awful. And I said, sir, I don't mean to be that person, that person. But they're mentoring female cadets that are going to be female future leaders. And there's half-naked women on the wall fly fishing behind the guy. He's like, all right, Maureen, we'll take it down. But then I was really looked at the state of Pennsylvania at that time. We had the first female 2-star general running the Army National Guard, and she was one of the first female helicopter pilots ever in the Army.
Wow.
Major General Jessica Wright. And then we also had the first female 2-star administrative AG officer running the 99th RSC, which is the reserve component for the Army Reserves. 2 female 2-stars, one running the Guard, one. So I wanted one of them to come and speak at Penn State to talk about their time as they were in the Women's Army Corps, which had been disbanded in the beginning of the 80s. They had such amazing stories to teach. I wasn't a trailblazer like they were. And I went to my boss and I was like, hey, we need to have these women talk. He's like, Maureen, first you want the posters down, and now you want this. He's like, it's a little too much.
Wow.
I was like, sir, you cannot possibly be confusing equal opportunity and sexual harassment. I was like, come on. So he gave the one female 2-star the smallest opportunity to come and talk to cadets. And we have our big ball every year where you commission all these cadets. And I was like, why can't she be the speaker? He's like, I already have this active duty colonel. And I was like, a colonel versus a female 2-star. He's like, Maureen, she's reserves. And I was like, okay. So I picked her up from the airport, and if a 2-star general comes, the lieutenant colonel picks her up. He sent me, the captain. And I went and picked her up, and I drove her, and she gave this speech. And then I went around him, and I went to the university, because I worked with the administration office, and I told them that she was going to be there, and I really wanted to do this big luncheon. So the women's studies and minority studies had this huge luncheon to give her an opportunity to make her time worthwhile. And he found out about it. He was invited. He didn't get mad at me. Maybe he did, but those are one of the times you just kind of take one for the team. But she did a remarkable job, and she brought in females that were in the first graduating class from Penn State ROTC back in the early, they started in the 1970s. Before you were in West Point, ROTC allowed women. The stories they told of what they had to endure and how they had to deal with the, just proving themselves and being mocked and made fun of and harassed. It was just a wonderful experience for all the kids on campus. And that lieutenant colonel never acknowledged this 2-star. And so at the end I was furious, and I remember taking her to the airport, and she said to me, how many years do you have in? I said, about 10, ma'am. She said, you're on the fence? I said, oh, I am like already over the fence, ma'am. I'm jumping down and rappelling as fast as I can. She said, you can't fix it if you get out. And she said, I dealt with a lot worse. She goes, that lieutenant colonel, he's nothing. She said, you don't worry about that. She goes, I could fight my own fight. She goes, you concentrate on what you're doing. She goes, what you did today was amazing. And that was just, to me, so impactful. And I will never forget.
Yeah, that was very powerful. Not just, sometimes it's important and it's powerful because you have to see it in order to know that you can become,
Yes.
this. So for the women and the girls, but I also think it's important for everyone,
Yes.
not just females, but males as well, so that they can see it and it feels like it's the norm. Let's get acclimated to this because we're here to stay, and, we're thriving. But I have a question for you. When you're saying that, do you feel like it has drastically advanced since then? Okay.
That's my fun story. So
Okay.
just last year I was at Lehigh University and I was speaking to their cadets. And I had a ball. I was just telling them how much fun. And I shared that story.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually shared a lot more details about how some of those women shared their harassment. And the eyes on them, both male and female cadets, were wide open.
Mm-hmm.
And they hung on every word I said. And at the end, 3 of the male cadets came up to me. And their battalion commander and deputy commander, or XO, were both females. And they said, "Ma'am, those 2 are the best cadets. They've earned it, and we're so proud of them, and we support them. And one of them is going to be the first female Secretary of Defense." And I said, "Oh, God, I hope not." And they looked at me like, "Why?" And I was like, "I'm not waiting 30 years. Are you kidding me?" I was like, we have 4 female 4-star generals right now serving actively in the military. Women can be anything they want to be. Infantry is open. Fighter pilots are open. You could be a Navy SEAL. There is no job that is closed to women, and that happened in 2017. Yes.
Wow.
That's it. In 2015, then Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta wholly lifted the ban on women in the military, allowing women to go in and serve in any job. At the time, you could be a fighter pilot and you can be in combat arms units, but you were not able to be an infantry, Navy SEAL, Ranger. So now we have lieutenants and captains that have graduated from Ranger School and Navy SEAL training. And those females now, because they're combat arms, will have opportunities to be 4-star generals that I never had the opportunity to be as a personnelist, right? So you have to be the combat arms to be able to lead those type of troops and be in commands and advise the President of the United States.
Yeah.
And if you don't have those experiences, it's not going to work. So we have the first female Secretary of the Air Force. We have the first female Secretary of the Army, first female Vice Chief of the Navy, first female 4-star combatant commander, first female in charge of the Coast Guard. So we will have the first female Secretary of Defense in the next 5 years, not 30 years like those young cadets graduating.
I'm loving this. Yeah, I'm loving, and it's sad, but it's exciting at the same time, because it's sad to hear when you're throwing out these years. You're like, 91.
Yes.
2001, 2017, yeah, I almost fell out my chair when you said that. Like, wow, but at the same time, these opportunities and the exposure. So it will be exciting to see when that first secretary does.
Absolutely.
Come in,
and it's, inspiring. I never realized that it meant anything. I was at a baseball game with my nursing home residents in Philadelphia, and they let me celebrate, their veteran service, and they needed someone from, Iraq and Afghanistan, so they asked me if I would be that rep. And they introduced all of us, and afterwards, when I was leaving and walking up the stairs, there were moms and daughters coming to the sides so they could shake my hand and then just say, "Can she get a picture with the female general?" And you didn't realize that really means anything, because I didn't have that, right? So you just learned to deal with it. But I knew there were women when I finally, got up in rank and met the 2 female 2-stars, and you knew what they went through. But now that you see young women really seeing more and having more and more opportunities, it's kind of fun.
It is. So
Yes.
I want to get on to some other things, but I kind of feel like there needs to be a part 2 to this podcast, like women in the military.
Sure.
So that's a good point, because it is so empowering. One quick thing, if you could narrow it down, one of your most rewarding moments that you've had that you would like to share.
So absolutely the time when that female 2-star told me to stay in, because that you can't fix it if you were changed. When I was a second lieutenant, my roommate was shot and killed at Fort Bragg. A beautiful African-American woman, graduated cum laude from Princeton. And I was just shocked that happened on an active duty military base by another service member. Just sexual assault trauma, and it took me a long time to get over that and digest it. But when I was promoted to colonel, I was promoted on the same day that she passed away, 20 years to the date. And there I was in charge of family programs and sexual assault and, events for women. And it was just like a culminating event that she was right. If you stay in now, you can get here, and you look from where that day was 20 years later. It was just kind of a different experience.
That is. That was a good one to share too. So as we kind of, you've talked about so many experiences, some challenging times. What advice would you give to a student who's considering joining the armed forces?
Oh, join. I would never go back and not do it again. I would do it over and over again. I loved every second. I know we talked about some, uncomfortable topics, but it was the best experience, and I've definitely become the best version of myself that I know I could ever have been because of military service. And now I have the opportunity to continue to serve veterans, and I meet World War II veterans, and so many cool people that just have so many shared experience, and you see what the military bond does, but also the opportunities. There are so many Fortune 500 and 100 company CEOs that started their service in the military. And I just tell kids, you'll see so many things. You'll get exposed to life experiences that you can't get just in your regular community to do it.
So for that student who says, you know what, I do want to serve, but I don't really know which branch to go into, how do they research, or what should they do?
Clearly, Army. I had a father who was Army, and I met a nurse who was in Army ROTC, so it kind of just introduced itself to me. I never really had that deep thoughts on which one is the best. Some people absolutely know that they want to do counterintelligence, or they want to be a fighter pilot, or they want to be a really specific special forces type, and so they will find those jobs because they have that, determination and already interest in certain fields. For folks that don't, you'll take your ASVAB and you'll get your scores, and then recruiters will tell you, you could do this, you could do that, and they introduce options for you. And then you'll start to learn about those options and decide what you want to do. And sometimes you think, I want that job. And you get to the Military Entrance Processing Station, the MEPS, and you go to sign up to that, and that day's not open. That job's not open. So you can come back tomorrow, or you can just sign up for another job in another service right now. But you have so many opportunities to research what the different services do, what your opportunities are to be enlisted, to be an officer, to be a warrant officer. There's so many websites and links and recruiters that can give you all types of information. So just do the research and you'll figure it out.
I was thinking that too, because you have recruiters all in the schools all the time. They can access them, they can access the websites, but that's good information. And also, like you said, join ROTC if you're considering. So I think those are some good tidbits to take away. What steps do they actually need to do to actually get started? Is it ASVAB, and then what's next?
So you'll have an opportunity to take an ASVAB in most high schools. Sometimes you can use the scores or not. If you want to enlist, that is one way. Some folks absolutely know they want to go to a service academy. They want to go to West Point, and they're already working on that. Those kids are determined, focused, and trying to get into those colleges. That's a whole different process. If you're going to college in ROTC, there's ROTC scholarships. You don't need an ASVAB. You get an SAT score, you're accepted into the University of Pittsburgh. You look at their ROTC program and you can apply for a scholarship. And some ROTC programs, like University of Pittsburgh, offers Army and Air Force ROTC. At Penn State, they offer Army, Navy, and Air Force. So you can put in applications and then see which one gives you a scholarship. That might, tilt your decision in one direction or another. So there's so many entry ways into the military service.
What about that person who wants to join later in life? Any advice for them?
Sure. You could not have to go active duty. You could join the Guard Reserves, right? So if you're working full time and you have a family, but you're like, I really want to serve, I want to give back, or maybe you want extra cash or you want some money for college, and you didn't go to college, you can join the National Guard or the Reserves, and they have opportunities for you to serve. And depending on what age, usually the cutoff's about 35, you can still enlist if you want it to go active duty, but sometimes you're balancing a work-life family and you just want something to supplement what you're doing. But lots of options.
Sounds good. So now let's talk about some of the educational benefits that are available to veterans, their families, or even that person who's ready to go into the military active duty.
Sure. So the military is a great way to get education paid for. So if you enlist, you will have the opportunity to build up on a GI Bill, Montgomery GI Bill. There's different GI Bills available to you to select. And then when you leave the service, you can use those GI Bills to go to school or for apprenticeship type programs if you decide not to go to college. Because sometimes when you leave the service, you came in at 17, single, and now you're leaving at 25 with 2 kids and a wife, and you need a job, and you try the academic and the education side and it may not work. So these apprenticeship programs and entrepreneurships. But the GI Bill is one way you can get your thing. If you join the National Guard, Pennsylvania National Guard, they have 2 amazing programs. They have the Education Assistant Program, so they will pay for your college and state schools while you're serving in the Guard. If you re-enlist, because active duty has GI Bill, where you can transfer benefits to dependents, your spouse or your kids, if you never used your GI Bill, the National Guard in Pennsylvania decided we should have a program like that. So if you didn't use your education benefits, let's do the military family education program where you can pass your benefits down to your children. I'll tell you, it's great. The military paid for my master's degrees and so many of my other education and reimbursed me when I was, finally going to college and getting those last 2 years. So I used my GI Bill for my children, and they both went to college for free, which is a great deal.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, that's definitely a good benefit. And we at VIA, we administer the EPIN Military Family Education Program. So there's information I know on our website about it, and I know there's also information on the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs website as well.
Yep, and the cool thing is today, the military knows when transitioning service members are leaving active duty, that they need to be prepared to come back to be, thriving civilians as, not outside of military. So they have so many programs to transition. So you'll go through education programs to learn how to use your GI Bill. They'll teach you about entrepreneurship programs, Boots to Business, VYs, to teach you how to start your own veteran-owned small business. But they also have so many opportunities for you to get professional certification programs. Your SHRM, Senior Human Resource Management, your PMP, the Project Management, Lean Six Sigma, Green Belt, Black Belt, Cisco courses, all free from some of the universities. So there's a lot of resources available to veterans while you're in and when you leave to continue to build your portfolio and your qualifications for employment.
Sounds good. Now, before we really shift into the active duty and veterans discussion, for a student, I hear this from students, and I don't know the difference. So some students have posed the question, they'll say, is it better to go to school first and then the military if you want to have a military career and a degree, or do it the other way around? Is there a benefit to doing one before the other?
It's a personal choice. If you decide to go to college, you're probably looking at going to ROTC, and that's an officer training course. So that would give you to an officer program. If you enlist first and go and serve first, you have to enlist. So you're going to be a private, versus coming out as a second lieutenant. So one's a leadership management track, and one is just, you're enlisting, and you can still change. You can be enlisted and then switch over to become an officer at any time. You have to get your degree. It's just a matter of choice. Some folks right out of high school aren't ready to go to college, and going and finding jobs and skills and getting some world experiences is a better platform for them, where others going to college and then, trying to get your degree while you're learning about the military is a different approach, and it's really just a personal choice.
Good to know. That's a question I've always wanted answered from someone who knew. Sometimes you'll hear chit chatter on what's best, but thank you for clearing that up.
And like I said, I went to basic training in AIT. I enlisted and I did ROTC at the same time, so you could do both. And I had the choice to commission or not commission, and I had the choice to go active duty or stay in the Guard Reserves. So every year as I learned more, I was able to make more informed decisions. So there's definitely steps you can take.
Absolutely. So now let's talk about our active duty as well as the service members as well as our veterans. Their sacrifices go deep, run deep. There's the ultimate sacrifice. So we're grateful for them, but they deserve some benefits and some options to kind of help them and their families through with everything. For a lack of a better word, what can we do to support them? So I say support, but I mean really like uphold them, lift them, give them resources. What can families and friends in the community do to help them?
So the biggest challenge veterans face is a lack of awareness of the resources. The resources are there for veterans and families. Whether you want to take those PMP certifications and SHRM courses and do better in your career, there's resources for that. If you are an aging veteran and your family can no longer take care of you and you need a nursing home, we have 6 nursing homes. But so many veterans and so many caregivers of veterans and relatives of veterans have no idea. They hear the DMVA and they mistake us for the Department of Motor Vehicles. They don't realize that every state has an Office of Veteran Affairs, and in Pennsylvania we're the Department of Military and Veteran Affairs. And that is where you can get access to all of your resources. But every county, all 67 counties, have a Director of Veteran Affairs. Every office, they have like 2 to 3 people that are there to help those veterans when they walk in the door. We have really great connections with your American Legions, your VFWs, trying to educate them. And both the counties, my office, and the service organizations have what we call Veteran Service Officers. They are the people that can help you do your claims and benefits, to help you find your benefits and your resources that are available to you. And of course, the Department of Military and Veteran Affairs, we don't have all the resources. So we rely on Department of Health, Department of Aging, Department of Human Services, DDAP, DCED, Department of Education, to really learn about resources for veterans, and then we help advocate and make sure veterans know the resources.
So for me, let's say I'm out and about and I run across a veteran who's at risk of being homeless. They don't know where all of their benefits are. Is there a website that's going to connect them to their county, or where they can go that I can share or take them to?
Absolutely. So it's DMVA, good acronym for the military, .pa.gov /PA Vet Connect. We've built a resource center with 1,900 private-public partnerships, right? We always drive down the street, you'll see someone with a sign that says, I'm a veteran, I'm hungry, or I'm homeless. You can give them $1, you can give them money. I always give them my business card, and then I ask them if they know where the shelters are, where they can get a hot meal. And in every zip code across the Commonwealth, there's resources available for them, which is encouraging.
And then for, let's say, the family members. So for family members who are trying to help their, whether they're active duty, whether it's a veteran, just to cope with life, because sometimes they leave the military life and they're lost, they're overwhelmed. There's mental issues going on, emotional issues going on, trauma. How do we help them help their...
Same way. So it's the same resource. Go to dmva.pa.gov. We have a partnership with the Elizabeth Dole Foundation to help caregivers to make sure they have resources available. But any of the organizations that are taking care of veterans will take care of families. The saddest thing right now is people just don't know that we're here. They don't know we have 6 nursing homes. They don't know that our office is here to support them. They don't know that we work with the YWCA, with your in Harrisburg, so many different resources like the Veterans Multi-Service Center. So many great partners that will support the entire family unit if they need help.
Which is good to know.
Yes.
So are there any other resources, or is there anything else that you would like to share just surrounding the entire discussion we've had today?
I would really just tell people to go to dmva.pa.gov. Not only will you find the resources, but you'll find information on our nursing homes. So Pennsylvania has, like you mentioned, over 700,000 veterans. Over 600,000 of them are over the age of 65. Not 600,000, over 300,000 are over the age of 65. We have the 4th largest population of veterans. We have one of the oldest population of veterans. Aging is an issue. Veterans are not in our nursing homes, and they're paying $20,000 for private nursing. And I'm talking about folks who, are amputees, and they're heavy, and their family members can't take care of them. We have facilities and resources to help those veterans. They should not be struggling.
I totally agree with you. Everything that they've sacrificed, their bravery, their service, their commitment to the country, I feel like sometimes they get the short end of the stick, and maybe it's just a lack of awareness and resources that can help them. So I do thank you for sharing all of this information, because we want them to get everything that they need and that they deserve, and then so much more.
Well, and it's therapeutic. I will tell you, I've had some folks come to my nursing home, and the families said, we are in desperate need. The veteran can hardly talk, cannot take care of themselves. And within 3 weeks, being surrounded by peers and fellow veterans who have shared experiences and understands what they're going through,
one another.
Very therapeutic, and it's turned around. And we even have 26 veteran courts across the Commonwealth. So folks that are struggling with drug and alcohol addiction, these judges and these programs help them, get back on the straight and narrow and keep them out of going to our State Correction Institute. So many resources, all on that website.
This has been amazing. Everything from your story, sharing, all of the challenges that women have faced in the military and their experiences, yet they persevered. I love that.
Yes.
And then also sharing for our students, what can they do if they're interested and if they want to support and be a part of it, as well as what we can do to help our veterans, veterans' families. So again, I thank you for joining me today, the Higher Education Access Corner. To all of our listeners and viewers who are tuning in today, thank you all. If you haven't had an opportunity yet for November to thank a veteran, thank a family member, or anything like that, please do so. As always, thank you for joining us at the Higher Education Access Corner, and we'll see you soon.